Ahoy, mates. This is Dave, ye old Dave, with the Pirate Podcast, interrupting your week in the middle of the week because I got a pretty important update for you. Had a conversation with Jeff J. from Tampa Bay. He's a great patriot that's been doing some great work to try to help us understand what's happening in Pinellas County and then within the cities of some of the cities contained within Pinellas County. So pull up a bar stool, grab your favorite rum, and sit and listen to us as we discuss not only Pinellas County Commission, but what's happening over in St. Petersburg, a call to action for Thursday this week, Thursday 10 a.m., St. Petersburg City Council meeting, and then the school board meeting of Pinellas County Commissioners that's coming up next Tuesday, the 23rd. Listen up. So we got a pretty special opportunity for the Pirate Podcast today, and something that doesn't come along all the time. You're about to be privy to or listening in on a discussion that I'm about to have with a friend of mine. For those of you that have followed any of the local community groups, you're probably aware of Jeff J. from Tampa Bay, who's always got something to say. But Jeff had messaged me some more research that he's completed in his quest to participate with all of us in chasing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I asked Jeff if he would come on and just do kind of an impromptu call for the listeners of the Pirate Podcast to fill us in a little bit on some of the amazing work and research that this activist Jeff J. from Tampa Bay has discovered along his way in looking at some things that the Pinellas County Commission in particular and the Pinellas County school system in addition have done. So Jeff J. from Tampa Bay, welcome to the Pirate Podcast.
Yes, what's up? And we're here where it's sunny and warm and never the norm.
I love it. Man, I appreciate you so much, and a lot of us have followed your work from kind of a distance, and now we get kind of a front row seat. But I just wanted to touch base with you, find out a little bit about what you've been working on, find out what's happening in Pinellas County, and find out what specifically we can do to help you in the work that you're doing.
Well, what basically in a nutshell, what I had started on was basically a challenge to the county commission, with all the science behind all the numerous rebuttable presumptions, masks, social distancing, all the whole nine, right? So that was about 100-pager. It started out that way, and what happened is that when the Pinellas County sheriffs did that sweep of the bars and restaurants, it kind of it sidetracked that project. So then me as a professional musician on the side, that kind of affects me indirectly. I'm kind of like an indirect stakeholder in that way.
Sure.
Plus, I just hate tyranny. So when the Pinellas County sheriffs did the sweep of to see which venues were not adhering to COVID restrictions, it set a fire under my butt, man. I was like, oh man, I gotta get on this. And so it came down to me doing a documents request, because they did say, okay, we found, that was in November, right? And so there were all kinds of, alleged COVID upturns, right, around that time through about January. And so they were saying, okay, well, we saw all these venues that were not compliant. So I guess they made the leap that was the cause of the upturns, right?
So, and by a document request, you mean a Freedom of Information request that gives you the ability to request any or all information as it pertains to subjects that you're interested in from our elected officials. This is all information that is discoverable and available to the public. If you send them a letter and you are looking for specific information, if they have that information, they're required to provide you, their boss and taxpayer, a response and the information you're requesting. That's what you referred to as a documents request.
Yes. Technically in Florida, it's a chapter, Florida Statutes Chapter 119. You're doing a 119 request. So I see a lot of people make mistakes here. In Florida, they'll say, oh, this is an FOIA 552. which is federal United States code. You don't do that in Florida. That's for a federal agency. So, anybody that's doing document requests. And I will give links to where you can see how I did the request. And anyway, they are not – there are some records that are considered exempt from disclosure, right?
Okay.
So that can be a bone to pick. And then sometimes you got to go to court. Like Judicial Watch does that a lot. They'll sue in court to get documents.
Yeah.
So I basically did documents requests. I'm like, okay, to particularly Yuli Cho, the director of the Florida Department of Health. But I did the likewise request to the Pinellas Board of County Commissioners, their attorney, Yuli Cho, the Pinellas County Sheriff, City of Clearwater Mayor, City of Clearwater Mayor's attorney, St. Petersburg Mayor, and St. Petersburg City Attorney as well, mainly them, and also code enforcements for both Clearwater and St. Petersburg. So I basically did a series of documents asking for epidemiological investigation data that they may have received, that they received from the Florida Department of Health in Pinellas, that is Yuli Cho. I've asked for any epidemiological investigation data which would demonstrate the proportion that bars, restaurants, and other entertainment venues, the proportion that they represent for COVID upturns in the county or in the city or in their city.
Jeff, let me put that in pirate podcast English. If you're going to shut down my business, you got to have proof of some sort. I would assume that you'd have proof before you even begin to shut down my business. That if you're saying my bar or restaurant is a COVID spreader, then there has to be some facts or some data or some backup before you close down my small business. I'd assume that there would be some data on file that would give you a justification or a rationale to make that decision or recommendation. So Dr. Cho, Sheriff's Department, cities, county, all being requested to provide the data by which they made this decision.
Yeah, and the way I got that idea, I was reading there was a case, the California Restaurant Associations won against the county, won against LA County. Of course, it was for outdoor dining. They got an injunction against the county to ban, they wanted to prevent them from conducting outdoor dining. But the principle stayed the same. The Restaurant Association won the injunction because the judge said, well, those represent very little for COVID upturns, like 3%. It's negligible, right?
Yeah.
Same with the New York case. Erie County won because they said, well, the county can't really show that restaurants are, a source of COVID upturns. So
you're
I just use that logic.
Dr. Cho, I imagine Dr. Cho sends you back an 80-page document of all of the data that comprise his decision to recommend these closures of our local businesses.
Yeah, hardly. And, luckily they're not, they are trying to shut them down and right now. So, so what happened, the first response that I got was from the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
The Sheriff's Department was unusually responsive. I was very impressed with them. They said I said, hey, I was very specific in my documents request. I said, please number my requests, reference my numbers in my subparagraph letters, and say yes, the record exists, or say no, the record doesn't exist. Because the reason I asked like that is because if I just say, hey, please send me the documents that reflect blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
Then they can say, oh, well, those records are exempt from disclosure. Well, that doesn't really tell me that much. That doesn't tell me that the records exist or don't exist.
Okay.
So I said, please be responsive and let me know, yes, it does exist. No, it doesn't. They were specific. They referenced each of my request numbers, my letters, and said, no, these records don't exist. No, these records don't exist. So, just between, basically the sheriffs don't want to be – this is evidence that the sheriffs do not want to be mass police. That's not why they got into law enforcement. In other words –
Let me interrupt you for a second there. Let me just try to understand.
Please.
So I own a small business in, let's say, St. Petersburg or wherever, and at some point over the course of the pandemic, I got Sheriff's Department, Yeah, how can I help you? Well, we kind of we got these code restrictions on the operation of your restaurant. Are you telling me that the sheriff's department responded to you, Jeff, and said that they really didn't have any data that had been provided by the Florida Department of Health that
That's right.
or gave a metric as to why they were imposing restrictions on these businesses?
Yes, they basically said, yeah, no, we don't have any of these records after they did that sweep.
Yeah.
So, I was asking records, hey, did you get any data? And then after you gathered that data, did you give, your findings to the Florida Department of Health? They actually said, yes, they did. So the logic of it is this. If this non-compliance with COVID restrictions was such a threat to public health, don't you think the Florida Department of Health would go, doing swabs for SARS-2, on the surfaces and, or wouldn't there be hospitalizations and deaths or cases traced to those venues?
So back to the Florida Department of Health, you must have gotten a voluminous response with data from the Florida Department of Health.
No, zero. They didn't respond at all. So the only ones that responded on my first service was the Pinellas County Sheriffs. Now, the process I did, it's called a common law default process. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, it's this. He who is silent admits. He who does not deny admits. It's called tacit acquiescence. In other words, they silently admit. Okay, the way that's done in common law is I did an affidavit sworn under penalties of perjury that I am not in possession of, these documents, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe, and I deny that those exist. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's a fact. It's a fact that I have not seen any of these documents that show these places are sources of COVID. I haven't seen these documents. I haven't seen these documents, and I deny that those exist. And then I put in my stipulation in the original document request that, okay, should you not provide these documents, then it's going to constitute an admission that none of those documents exist either, and that you're proceeding with these enforcement of COVID restrictions without any rational basis.
Wow.
Right. So it's illegal. I learned that. I was a libertarian law activist here in Tampa Bay, like early 2000s. We used to do some radical stuff, tax protesting and IRS, and I had sheriffs and TPD following me around for a while, and so I thought I got out of all that, and then this COVID stuff happens, and it got the monster back out in me.
So if they don't answer, their non-answer is the equivalent of we don't have those documents.
That's right, and the way I worded it. So, of course, they ignore. So I did the second service that's called a notice of fault. In other words, it's good faith. In other words, I gave them 15 days. I let them go longer than 15 days. I let it go probably almost a month, right? Mm-hmm. So I send the second notice. It's called a notice of fault. I'm like, hey, by the way, I asked for this and this. I didn't get any of those documents, but the sheriffs did say that they don't have any of the documents, so I attached the sheriff's service to all the previous places I told you I sent the first one to. Uh-huh. And I said, if I don't hear from you in, another 15 days, you're going to be actually in default pursuant to, in other words, you're a default admission. That's used in court, default judgments. And the whole logic of it is based in common law. The English common law is in full force and effect in Florida in both civil and criminal law. Unless it's abrogated by statute. In other words, if a Florida statute obliterates that common law principle, then the statute takes precedence, right? Mm-hmm. But common law is common. It means common custom and usage. So in law, in Florida, there's tons of court cases that says if an affidavit is left unrefuted or uncontroverted or rebutted, right? If it's left unrebutted, then the trial court has to accept that affidavit as true, right? So it's still in common custom and usage that an unrebutted affidavit stands as truth. In other words, silence equals admission. That's a common law maxim that's been around since the Magna Carta, right?
Jeff, let's keep it from 50,000 feet down to 5,000 feet. Mayor Rick Kreisman, who posts on Twitter about every other day how proud he is of the enforcement of the enforcement against these small businesses. I'm certain that on the second service of process to Mayor Rick Kreisman, you must have gotten a very detailed and very thorough response from either the City of St. Petersburg attorney or from the mayor himself, because he's out there bragging about it and talking about it every day. So what did you get back from the City of St. Petersburg?
Well, you're going to love this. This is interesting. City of St. Petersburg has what's called a custodian of public records, which
Okay.
I found that to be pretty darn interesting. So that's actually on the second service. I sent the same documents request to the custodian of public records. He says we do not have any of that data. So boom, that's a default right there. City of St. Petersburg, they said we're going to contact the mayor's office. So I got an email back from the custodian of public records, City of St. Petersburg. We don't have any data.
Hold it. Jeff, I have to interrupt you. The City of St. Petersburg has been zealously enforcing COVID business restrictions against businesses. Did you just tell me that the City of St. Petersburg's official Department of Records said that they don't have any data that backs up this enforcement action?
That's right. And as well as Clearwater, when I sent the documents to the Clearwater mayor and the Clearwater city attorney, the city attorney file stamped it as received by the city's attorney's office and sent it to the Clearwater police. So the Clearwater city attorney hit the eject button and sent my documents request to the Clearwater police. And so the Clearwater police sent me a very responsive return, just like the sheriff. They said, no, we don't have any of those documents. So in other words, the mayor's office, by giving the the Clearwater mayor's office, by giving the Clearwater Police Department my documents request, that means they, abandoned all responsibility and put it on the police. So that means Clearwater is proceeding without any data, also, including their code enforcement.
It reminds me of one of those cartoons where everybody's pointing at each other, because at the end of the day, nobody has this. You got nothing. You got no substantive data back from the Florida Department of Health, Pinellas County, Dr. Cho, with a specific answer to your question about the data that you were seeking that would justify his recommendation that these businesses be closed.
That's right. That's right. And so that was great. And so then I did a final default to all of them. I said, hey, thanks for playing. Basically, you have admitted to the following. We don't have any data that demonstrates this. We don't have any data that demonstrates that, And therefore, this constitutes a final default admission on your part that no such data exists and that you're proceeding with your enforcement without any rational basis.
So I'm not an attorney, and so none of this content that we've talked about is legal advice, nor are you. But what I would surmise here is if I were a business that's been harmed in any way by the Pinellas County COVID restrictions that have been leveled or asserted against businesses, stating that these businesses were super spreaders of COVID and what you have here is pretty conclusive that they got a clear path to damages here against anybody that's enforcing these made-up restrictions without any documentation or any facts to back up their assertions that these bars and restaurants cause COVID.
Yeah, and I finally got a response. Okay, once I did the default, then the St. Pete City attorney finally got back to me.
Yeah.
And said, hey, well, what you're stating is, not based on any fact or law. They basically had to say, in other words, I put them in a position where they actually had to write me back. Finally, Yeah. Now, the cherry on top is this. If you go on FloridaPublicNotices.com, okay, that's where all the newspapers put their legal notices.
Yep.
I got La Gaceta, which is Lagaceta. So if you go on the newspaper, I sent them, in other words, I uploaded my entire 167-page service, over the course of 3 months.
Yeah. It's
all online. It's publicly available. And then I did a public legal notice stating that the St. Petersburg, Pinellas County, City of St. Petersburg, and Clearwater City, they are in default in my favor pursuant to the documentation that's uploaded. And I have a link. To that. And so if you go on floridapublicnotices.com and then you filter by La Gaceta Newspaper and do the date March 12th, 2021, there's going to be a lot of notices, okay? So what you do is you click on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, on the 10th one down, La Gaceta, you click on that, and then you view that file, and my notice is on page 25, fourth notice down. Page 25, fourth notice down. And what I can do, I'll get your email, and I will email you everything so your listeners can get that documentation from you.
Yep.
Now, there is one sneaky thing, dirty politics that's going on in St. Petersburg right now. There's been an attorney named Timothy Weber. He is mopping the floor with Rick Kreitzman's head on these COVID fines. He's winning in court, okay? He's beating them. So what the city of St. Pete tried to do, they tried to sneak in some legislation to where anybody the mayor designates. Right now the law says, this is the law in St. Pete right now.
Oh, yeah,
the chief of police, right, the chief of police has the authority to, write citations.
Yeah.
And once you get 2 of those citations, in order to suspend your after-hours permit, and that's where all the bars make their money. That's where all the cafes make all their money. It's called an extended hours permit. Even restaurants have an outdoor dining, till 3 in the morning. It's great. It's awesome down in St. Pete, right? So they can suspend that license after a conviction, okay? So a conviction is in court by a judge. Mm-hmm. So Kreitzman tried to assume he got his city attorneys to propose amendments to the city council. So for anybody not familiar with how government structure works, you've got the mayor, who's the executive branch, and then you've got the city council, that's the legislative branch, right? They write the laws, and then you have your judicial branch, court, right? So he tried to get the city council to pass law to where anybody the mayor picks, which is called a person of designation, replaces the chief of police, right? And all it requires is citations to suspend the license rather than court, right?
So he tried to so Kreitzman could appoint me, the head of the Pirate Podcast, as one of his little deputies, and I could run around giving people citations.
Yes.
That's what. Yeah,
or the janitor. That's the city hall janitor. Hey, you want to write some tickets today, man?
Yeah. Anyone that you have a grievance against gets a ticket. So what happened with?
No, this is interesting. So we did a major Write Your City Council campaign.
Yeah.
50 people showed up. They were going to do a first reading to pass it.
Yeah.
And they said, whoa, it was obvious the city council didn't quite comprehend the full import. And so they actually recommended a committee review it. Okay. So they reviewed it on March 11th, and they did not pass those amendments except the dangerous ones. The dangerous ones were they kept, okay, you still have to be convicted to get suspended, which is great. That was the one that was really scary. And then their citations basically have to be written before a conviction, right? So they didn't, though, get rid of the POD thing, the person of designation. So they still have in there to vote on, this is March 18th, City Hall. The vote's going to happen. I'm going to send you links to that so anybody in St. Petersburg, I'm going to send you links to that. You can write your council members about, opposing this. This is happening Thursday, which is in 2 days. So they recommend it. Now, the other dangerous thing is this. DeSantis, right, he passed the latest executive order exempting businesses from their fines. In other words, they're not liable for fines for the past year.
Right.
The end around that the city attorneys, they're trying to vote on this Thursday also, this one's really dangerous. They want the city council to amend and clarify that any emergency order is just as good as an ordinance, in so many words. In other words, a stroke of a pen by the executive branch, right, has the full force and weight of a legislated law, an ordinance, a legislated ordinance by the city council, right?
So literally whatever Kreitzman says, whatever Kreitzman writes becomes de facto law.
Yes, and so I am. My position is I'm actually going in there to speak. it's going to be great. The 16, there's going to be about 20 restaurant and bar owners that are speaking first. We actually have everything organized.
Okay.
So in case they get time closed, the other guy can pick up where they left off. So not one issue is left unsaid, right?
Yeah.
So I'm coming in as a concerned citizen. You know, I'm not a stakeholder. I don't own a bar or restaurant.
Right.
I'm a patriot, man. You know, I don't like to see tyranny, and I'll fight it tooth and nail. And so I'm going in there. I'm saying, look, this POD thing has to go. You can't just appoint a city hall janitor to write tickets.
Yeah.
Because that centralizes power within the mayor's office. It makes it unilateral. Even though the chief of police is in the executive branch of the mayor's office, it's at least a degree of separation of offices. You know what I mean? And then I'm saying, hey, you know, the city's attorney's office already tried to sneak one in on you guys with this sneaky legislation that almost got past you. You know, they're not operating in good faith, you know. So you guys need to shoot down this proposal for, you know, clarifying that emergency orders are just as good as ordinances, because they're going to weaponize it against small businesses, you know.
This meeting is Thursday night at the city council meeting at the St. Petersburg City Hall.
Thursday morning.
Oh, Thursday morning.
Thursday morning.
Okay.
Yep.
And if people can't be there in person, can they weigh in advance somehow, Jeff?
Yeah. You go in. You basically. I recommend anybody. You want to write all the council members, whether they're in your district or not, if you live in St. Petersburg, and mention I'm a registered voter, and you know what, I'm going to write to all you council members because all council members vote. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to. That's why I write to all council members, and that's the point I make. And I have a sample letter that I'll send you. I'll send you all that, Dave, and then your listeners can get the info from you.
We'll try to get most of this out tonight so that people have it and can get.
Yeah, that's a priority issue right now.
Yeah.
And then we have the school board. We have the school board issue coming up March 23rd, right?
That's what I was going to ask you. So that's a week from today. It's Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning as well, because they like to have these meetings at 10 o'clock in the morning when most people can't attend. But give me your take on the Pinellas County School Board meeting that's coming up a week from today.
Well, there's tons of data. There's been schools that have been open in Sweden, in Denmark. Kids don't have masks. No significant rise in severe illness of children with COVID, nor are they likely to spread it. So that's a number one thing right there. So children are not a threat to public health with SARS-2 infections. And then with that said, the damages that children can suffer, it's called facial emotional recognition. And when we were kids, we all learned by reading faces. That's and there's tons of data and science behind that. That's a very important skill to have for a child. And when it's impeded, they get psychosocial disorders. So even in healthy people. So if by masking children on a consistent basis, we are impeding that neurological development of children. And say some kids that might be a little bit behind the curve as of your average student, it's going to damage them even more, And so it's a risk-benefit thing. So, there's the risks of a child's neurodevelopment being damaged, that far outweighs, them walking around without a mask, because they're not going to spread it. They're not going to, that's my whole point that I'm going to bring up.
So that meeting is Tuesday, March 23rd. So we got St. Petersburg City Council meeting for any of you St. Petersburg City Council stakeholders or residents or anyone interested in that. You show up at the St. Petersburg City Council meeting on Thursday morning. Then the following Tuesday is the Pinellas County School Board meeting. The Pinellas County School Board meeting is held over at the Florida, whatever that is, the Nature Center over there. That's at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. If you want to speak via Zoom on that one, I think you have to pre-register early, or you can email the school board if you can't attend that. Jeff J. from Tampa Bay, you are a terrific patriot. Man, we appreciate you more than you know. We'll put a lot of this information out on the Pirate Podcast so that people can get some of the links you talked about. Hopefully we'll see several of you at the City Council meeting in St. Petersburg on Thursday. Following Tuesday at the school board meeting, there's going to be a huge protest There's going to be a lot of people there to speak. It's time for these masks to go away. It's evident by the work that Jeff J. from Tampa Bay is doing that these people don't have any data to back this up. This is an ideological issue. So thank you for tuning in to the Pirate Podcast, where we are pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jeff J. from Tampa Bay, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Dave.